through.
So true, funny how it seems, always in time, but never in line for dreams. Head over heels, went toe to toe. This is the sound of my soul.
Hi everybody, Keith here, East Village Wine Geek. Today I want to talk about what you just saw. What happens when you actually taste a glass of wine? What's going on in your brain? How do you assess wine? A lot of people get nervous about this part. There are three things that we understand when we sip wine. First thing is we look at the wine, we sniff the wine, and then we taste the wine. And within those three options, or within those three steps, the most important would be the nose. What happens when you smell a wine? Let's go through it. The first thing you do is you look at it. When you're looking at a wine, you kind of get an idea of the body of a wine. If you can see through the wine, it means it has a bright acidity. It means the wine's going to be a little bit lighter on the palate. If you can't see through the wine, that means it has a low acidity. That means it's going to be more weighty on the palate. And sometimes it's right in between, like this one. You can kind of see through and you kind of can't. This is a medium-bodied red wine. The next thing you want to do is swirl the wine. You see a lot of people doing this. All you're doing is agitating the wine a little bit. You don't really need to do a crazy, fancy swirl. All you need to do is agitate it a little bit. Because what you're doing is you're encouraging oxygen to evaporate and oxidize the wine so the wine starts to open up and show you what it has to offer. The next thing you're doing is smelling the wine. Ooh, that smells good. When you smell a wine, this is the most nerve-wracking part for people. What we want to understand here is whatever your brain knows is what you're going to smell. If you've never smelled rose petals before, you're never going to smell it in a wine, and that's okay. If you smell a wine and you say, it's grapey, that's okay. Because what you're doing is you're understanding in your mind, in your confidence, that it's grapey. And once you're confident about that grapiness, you can move on. Your brain is going to move on to something different. We have a lot of data stored up in here. If you've smelled asparagus, if you've smelled nettles, if you've smelled chamomile tea, if you've smelled leather and tobacco, you're going to be able to perceive it in wine. But if you've never smelled those things, it's never going to happen. And what's happening when we smell wine? When you do that, what's happening is the aromas are going up your nasal passage and interacting with your olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb has these little hairs on it, and it attaches the flavonoids in your brain to make you say tobacco or blueberry or strawberry. Now, this is a process that takes a long time to get used to. It takes a long time to understand. You have to constantly drink wine, take notes, and all this stuff. But if you're just a casual wine drinker, what's important is that the aroma of the wine when you smell it is pleasant. If it's not pleasant, it's not worth drinking. So, you've swirled it, and you've sniffed it. Now, it's time to take a sip. This is the fun part. There's a lot going on right there. If you notice, I did this really weird little embarrassing thing where I drew oxygen into my mouth. I went like that. What I'm doing is I'm encouraging oxygen to come into my mouth and oxidize my palate, further oxidizing the wine, further evaporating the alcohol, and allowing even more aromas to come from inside my palate up my retronasal passage, which is behind your nose, to communicate with the olfactory bulb just like it would if you were doing when you were smelling with your nose. One misconception is here. Your palate, your tongue, your cheeks, everything, the only thing that your palate is doing is assessing the texture and the weight of the wine. The dryness that you taste is tannin. the weight on the palate. There's everything that's in the wine kind of weighting down your palate. If it's a nice weight, that means that there has a less acidity. If it's a light weight, that means it has more acidity. The flavor of a wine, when you're like, okay, I taste earth and soil and this and that, that's actually your nose doing the job. What's happening is that same thing that you did with your nose is happening in your mouth. And when you bring oxygen into your mouth, the aromas are oxidizing, going up your retronasal passage and adding information to your olfactory bulb to talk to your orbital frontal lobe. So that's what's happening. It's a very simple, well, I guess it's pretty complicated, but it's also very simple. Tasting wine is all about enjoyment. As long as you enjoy the wine is fine. If you need to say grapey, say grapey. And then when you're done saying grapey, then you'll say tobacco.